Well, I'm glad that we're recording. I hope we got this worldwide because I caught the fish. I caught the, but the people down in the other boat way out there, I could hear them scream and clap because I know what they were saying over there. He'll never bring that baby in. So I just thought I'd tell you how important our district governor's job is, and that's what we normally do. Something like, oh no, wait a minute. There's another message in there. And that message is this, and I get this from the scriptures, is that today, I hope that you've learned to become fishers of men and fishers of women, because that's what we're really here about. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time and ask you one question, and then see if I can answer it for you a little bit. And the question is this: why Rotary? Why do you belong? Richard L. Evans, one of our international presidents, once said these words. He says, "No organization has a right to take our time unless it improves our life." And so I started looking for things that would teach me, how does Rotary really improve our lives? Rick King has 20 reasons why. I'm not going to give you 20, it's too much today. But I wanted to pick 4 of those reasons that were important to me, because as you think about this and as you're going out and we're teaching you how people are going to ask you the question, how to bring new members in. Well, why? Why Rotary? And if you have some pat little answers to say, these are the reasons why I belong to Rotary. Okay. And interestingly enough, in our seminar this morning, some of these ideas were already brought forward. So we're going to do the first one is we develop great friendships. And we really do. Rotary puts us in a setting where we are with people of different backgrounds, different manners of life, different interests, different activities, different convictions. And it intermixes us and allows us to grow in a way that we can't grow like, I'm in the real estate business. I go to a real estate meeting, all these people do the same thing I do. Maybe I might learn a little bit more about real estate, but not like Rotary. It gives us all of this intermixing of ideas, concepts, and opportunities to do business together. Where is our last speaker anyway? I'll probably be buying some concrete and asphalt from him shortly because I met him here. All right. So we get the opportunity to inter-network. But there's something else that happens. We begin to understand each other. If I go to a real estate meeting, I'm complaining, the complaint I'm giving, everybody else has that complaint. But if I'm sitting across the table from you and you start complaining about what, I might look and say, maybe my life is not as bad as I thought it was. Or if you start praising things, I might say, oh my gosh, I hadn't even thought of that. And then we get close and we're grateful. I mean, we learn how to work with each other. And then sometimes things happen to us. So this happened to me. My little daughter, Cindy, who turns 50 next year at age 16, was seriously ill. I mean, seriously ill. My wife had taken her to the doctor, I think 18 times in about a 3-month period of time, trying to figure out what was wrong. And they couldn't figure it out. Interesting enough, when we were in Canada, the doctor there did figure it out. And he said, take this letter, give it to your doctor back home, tell him to make sure he takes care of this. And he was right. Only problem is this doctor never read the letter. Another story. Anyway, she woke up one morning screaming, "Daddy, it hurts so bad." My wife jumped out of, we were asleep, we jumped out of bed. My wife started to call the doctors in Fresno that we normally took her to. I says, this is so serious, call my home doctor, my family doctor, right here in Kerman, which is about 5 minutes away. So we took her there. He looked at me and he said to me, do you want me to call the ambulance or can you drive her to the hospital right now? I said, I'll drive her. He says, do you have a surgeon that you know? I said, I know nobody. That's the interesting thing. He chose one of my very best friends. I mean, your mind doesn't work sometimes when there is such seriousness. She had an operation that night, that day. The surgeon said it was the worst case of peritonitis that he had ever seen in his life. My family doctor said, I didn't have the heart to tell you. I didn't think she was going to live through the night. Rotarian expressed their concern for her, but there was one special Rotarian that I'll never, ever forget. His name was Peter Caton. And he looked at me after this experience, a couple of days, and he asked me this simple question: Ken, how are you? You see, friendships develop in a special way. There's no better experience than life than reaching down and lifting someone up. And I needed someone to lift me up at that particular point in time, because I nearly lost a daughter. As I say, she turns 50 this year, so she's okay. I don't know, maybe we should have lost her. No, not true. Friendships, they're great, and that's one of the great things. This fellowship that we have is a lovely thing. I told you earlier, Rick King's one of my very best friends in the world, and I would have never met him without being in Rotary. And I have friends all over the world. I can remember one other experience similar to this, where I'm going to Italy, and we wanted in Milan, and we wanted to see something, and I found out my grandchild, I was taking my grandchild there. She said, I said, why do you want to go to Milan? When my grandchildren turn 12, I take them wherever they want to in the world. Okay. Oh, Grandpa, I want to go to Milan. I said, well, why do you want to go to Milan? Well, Grandpa, it's the fashion capital of the world. 12 years old. And she said, oh, by the way, Grandpa, this is going to be a shopping trip. I said, okay. But I said, really? She said, I want to see one of those runways, where the fashion models walk up and down the runway. So I said, well, that'd be fine. Well, I discovered that you have to be 18 years old in order to get there. However, because of Rotary, I had a friend that lived there. Called him up. Can you do it? Can you get it? He says, I'm not going to promise you anything. I'll do the best I can. And sure enough, we got to see it. So there's opportunities and things like that happen. Friendship is probably, to me, one of the most important key things. And so as you're talking to people, you say, hey, you're my friend. I want you to join. You're going to get a lot of other friends in a lot of different ways. It's really important. The next thing that Rotary teaches us is this. It teaches us high ethical standards. In fact, you were taught it today with a coin. It's a four-way test is on there, talking about, truth and fairness and goodwill and being beneficial. If we live those principles that we're taught, how much better are we going to be as people? But it's more than just honesty. And it's more than just not lying. It is truth telling, truth living, truth speaking, truth loving. Those are keys that we really don't deal with a lot. One of the favorite things that I get to do, we gotta make sure I don't run out of time. My favorite musical is Les Miserables, and it's about Jean Valjean, and most of you have seen it, so I'm not going to go through the great detail about him being thrown into prison and then getting out and being all the things that happened to him. But one thing in that play is when they find an individual who they think is Jean Valjean, who is not. And Jean Valjean, who was very prominent at this time and an important person, he had a conflict. He had to make up, should I tell the court that I am Jean Valjean so this man can be free? Or should I not, so that I can remain free? Whoa, and I want you to know something. All of us in our lives at one time or another are going to be confronted with a conflict of interest. And we have to make up our mind now. Are we going to live the four-way test and tell the truth? Or are we not? Because the conflicts are going to come and we're going to be tested. And to Jean Valjean's credit, he said, I am Jean Valjean. And to me, that's one of the most important lessons taught in that particular play. Thomas Carlyle said these words. He says, convictions are worthless unless it is converted to conduct. So we can espouse one thing, but we need to learn to live it. The last two I'm going to put together, and they both deal with service. One is on the international side, And we all know the things that we do internationally, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But I do want to talk about your community side, because this is probably one of the greatest areas that you can develop members. When I was a young president in 1974, a long time ago, our club grew by 33% without a membership program at all. We had no membership program. We grew 33%. Why did we grow? Because we found a need in our community, and we decided that we were going to go out and see if we could satisfy that need. And it was very interesting. As the club president, I chose the doctor to be head of this committee. And I suggested to him, I said, you know what, we need another doctor. I know of it. He says, I've been trying to get a doctor forever. Nobody wants to come to this town. There's only about 3,000 or 4,000 people that live in this town. But let me work on it a little bit before you can, and I'll come back and I'll tell you what to do. Remember when I said to you, give them an idea, let them work on it? He comes back and you know what he says? I think we ought to try to get paramedics. I said, well, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, I think people would like to do that. Let's hold a club assembly. So we held a club assembly. We all just debated the issue up one side and down the other, and we all decided, and unanimously we said, our club is going to bring paramedics into the community. But because it's going to cost them, remember, I'm back in 1974, 75, it's going to cost over $100,000 a year. We got to go to the public and see if they will vote to raise their taxes so that we can have paramedics in our community. So we went to the fire district to see if we could get them to join in. You're not going to believe this, but it's true. Fire district, paramedics, what's that? We don't want any part to do with it. Isn't it interesting how things have changed? But we convinced them to put it on the ballot. But the other fire district didn't want it. And it's a big district. They kept on reducing our territory. I mean, it went into Fresno, smaller and smaller, and so it was just a little part of there, because they figured, well, the tax base would be too heavy for the people that are going to vote against it. However, every single Rotarian had a job. Every single Rotarian was promoting it. My job was to go out and give speeches. I gave speeches to 25 groups. And one of them was the Lions Club. And of course, they're our big competitor in town. And they're just battering me over the head until one of the members stands up and says, what are you guys doing again? This is really a good idea. We need it. And they joined us. In fact, 78% of the people voted yes to raise their taxes to have paramedics. There's a lot more to this story, but I'm going to end it with this. Over 30 years later, my brother was driving to work, past the paramedics where they were stationed. He felt something in his heart. He pulled in and he flatlined, died. The paramedics ran out, gave him a shock treatment, and saved his life. You never know. He's trying to get me a little emotional here, but you never know. You never know what you're going to do. Okay. So what I'm asking you is to go out and give service. I mean, we talk about service, but do we really do service in a very real way that has real meaning? That's what we need to do. And I'm going to end with this little story. It comes from that great American magazine called the Reader's Digest. So I read this article, and it is back before or during World War I. And the husband's away at war. The wife is working in the factory. She has two children. One of them is about 12 years old, and the other one's about 5 years or 6 years old. And the mother says to the 12-year-old, will you take care of the child today? I need to go to work. Sure, Mom. And so anyway, they're doing something, and they leave the house, and they cross the street, and sure enough, they both get hit by a car. Well, the little boy got up and he dusted himself off, but the little girl was pretty seriously injured. And they both ran into the hospital. It wasn't paramedics, it was the ambulance in those days. And doctor comes up to the little boy, says, you know, your sister has a rare blood and you have the same blood type, and we need blood to help her. Would you give of your blood? And he looks up at the doctor and he says, will it save her life? And he says, yes, it will. And so he gave his blood. And then he had a transfusion and whatever else. And how long later, I don't know, maybe a day later, the doctor comes in to the little boy. And the first thing he asks is, how is my sister? And she says, oh, your sister's going to be just wonderful. And then the doctor asks the little boy this question. He says, and how are you? And the little boy says, when am I going to die? What do you mean? I thought by giving my blood, I would die. I'm not asking you to give all of your blood. What I'm asking you is this. Do service that has real meaning in life. And when you do that type of service like our paramedics, your clubs will grow because the people want to belong to a club that is doing something. Thank you very much. I'm supposed to introduce Rick. Does anybody know this guy? Most phenomenal man in the world. I already told you he never listens to you. Never. So I'm going to tell you one more thing before I get him up here. Come on up, Rick. This is a true story. When he asked me to be his membership chairman, I said, no, I don't want to do that job. But then it's pretty hard to turn him down. And so because we belong to the same church, I said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll pray about it. And you pray about it. And we'll see if we get the same answer. And if I get the answer that says I'll do the job, I'll do it. If I don't, I won't. 2 weeks later, we see each other. He's smiling. I'm saying, oh boy. He said, I got the answer. I said, you did? I said, what's the answer? You're doing it. I said, I am. I said, did you get the full answer? He said, what are you talking about? He said, I got the answer. I'm doing it. But there's comes with the caveat. When we disagree, you're going to have to acquiesce to me. Guess what? He said, yes. He is a great man. You already know this, but he's a great friend. When I talk about friendship, he would do anything for me as I would for him. And it's people like him that I'm proud to have in my life. All yours.
Thank you, Ken. My understanding from the district governor is that I'm supposed to take an hour now and motivate you to do membership. And I suspect that Ken Boyd has already done a magnificent job of that endeavor. We're delighted to have him here. If I had no other reason to be a Rotarian, my friendship with Ken Boyd would be sufficient. And I suspect for each of you, there is someone in your life who you've met in Rotary where you feel somewhat the same way. Ken, we're grateful for your presence here, particularly after a very busy week. A great jurist who lawyers like to quote from time to time, by the name of Oliver Wendell Holmes, said on one occasion, to an imagination of any scope, the most far-reaching form of power is not the command of great armies, is not the accumulation of great wealth, is not the accumulation of great properties, is not great political influence or political position. To an imagination of any scope, he said, the most far-reaching form of power is the command of an idea. And Rotary was and is an idea. 117 years ago, Paul Harris got 3 friends of his together. They had dinner at Madame Scali's Italian restaurant, across the street to Paul Harris's law office, and on a rainy, wintry, cold night, formed the world's first service club, Chicago Rotary 1. And today, as we meet here, there are some 37,000 clubs all over the globe. And we're talking about membership in an age of a pandemic that has been crushing for so many. And the question for each of us is this: what are you going to do about it? I have been in Rotary 53 years. I've traveled to 135 countries. in my Rotary service, many of them many times over. I have met with many heads of state and Rotarians all over the world. I have given speeches to Rotarians in every state of the United States and every province in Canada. And I've met some wonderful people. But always in my mind are the words that came to me one night. What are you going to do about it? I was in a guest house on the border of India and Pakistan. The electricity had gone out, as was often the case when I got up to speak. I don't know why that was. I always suspected somebody was plotting. They put me in this guest house to spend the night, and the lights went out. And it was so dark, I couldn't see my hands in front of my face. I thought for a moment I had gone blind. I was nervous. This was 40 some odd years ago, on my first of a dozen trips to India over the years. And I was frightened. And I got down by my bed and I prayed. I didn't understand the sights I had seen on this, my first trip to India, in the heartland of the country, in small villages. I had never seen such poverty. I lived in Fremont, California. I had never seen a young boy crawling on his elbows down the street because he'd been inflicted by polio. I'd never seen children with their hands out begging for drops of food as my car came to a stop on dusty, dirty roads. I'd never seen these things before in my life. I was raised in California. I was a practicing attorney. I had a good income. I drove a Rolls Royce. My suits were tailored in Italy. I had never seen the kind of experiences that came to me on this first journey 40 some odd years ago to that vast and legendary land known as India. And I said to my God, what is the purpose of these young children being born? Most of them will be dead by the time they reach the age of 5. The ones I'd seen out on the street, begging, thirsty, hungry, diseased, and forsaken by so many. I couldn't understand why the same God who loved me and had given me so much prosperity, so much health, so much education, so much love for my family, why he had let me be born where I was born, in the United States of America, why these children were born where they were born, destined to perish without anyone ever knowing their name. I couldn't understand it. I was an educated person. I thought that I was intelligent and smart, but I couldn't understand it. And I said, my God, why are these children even born? And in the pitch darkness of that night, on the border of India and Pakistan, in a small guest cottage with the electricity gone and as dark as I had ever known it. It was as if God was standing beside me, and he said, "Don't worry about them. I will take care of them. It was meant for you to see them. The question is, Rick, what are you going to do about it?" I've never forgotten that moment. It changed me. It changed me. I was no longer worried about my success as a lawyer or what kind of a car I drove. What are you going to do about it? This year, our international president is from Calcutta. I've been to his home. He's a great man. And he has a theme which says, serve to change lives. That's why we're here today, because we are destined to do something about it. Each of us has a responsibility, a conviction, and a commitment to do something about this organization, which is facing challenging times in this health crisis in which we live. I've heard all of the excuses. Rick, our destiny is to give Rotary to qualified people, not just numbers. And I always respond and say, I guess what you're doing is telling me that all of the qualified people in your town have been invited to join Rotary, and there are no qualified people left. Obviously, that's not the case. And then they say, membership campaigns don't work because the people drop out soon after they've joined. Certainly it's true that we lose some new people soon after they join Rotary. They either join for the wrong reason, or we didn't engage them properly, or we didn't have an interview with them, which saves about 50% of them if we do. But that's like saying we shouldn't do anything about it, because some people are going to leave Rotary if we do. But more people will stay if we do something about it. Then I've heard club presidents say to me, we don't need any more members in our club. Take a look, we've already got 75 members. I went to London, England, and they asked me to talk about membership. And I said, I'm glad I got here before Rotary was dead in London. And they shuffled a little bit, not liking what a Californian was telling them. And I said, it's my understanding that 15 years ago, there were 3,500 Rotarians from London alone in this district. Now there are 1,700. And if I understand it correctly, in another 15 years, there will be none. Because if you look at all of your attendance, the members are all getting on in years. And you may not think you need more members today, but you will need them tomorrow. So you better do something about it while you can. What are you going to do about it? I was in Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, in Western Africa. I was in a Sheraton hotel suite. I looked out the window and there was the town dump, garbage pit. My job was to go downstairs and give the keys to a cement block of house to a young African mother who was holding a little girl in each of her two hands. Their father was dead of AIDS. Their sister was dead of AIDS. But there were two little girls left alive. They had spent their entire lives in the garbage dump, where they lived in cardboard boxes and where they found their food. And on your behalf, and on behalf of Rotarians the world over, I gave this young African mother in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, the keys to 2 cement slab rooms and a toilet. Not the kind of house that you and I live in, but for them it was a castle. To this day, I see the look on this woman's face. I've always tried to understand it. How far would I travel? How long would I go? How much would I pay to buy the look I saw on her face that day? As through an interpreter, she was made to understand that this was a gift from us to her, with no requirement for any payment. We were doing something about it because somewhere, someone like you and me did something of value. I much appreciate your attendance here today, and those of you that have joined us on Zoom. Thank you for your commitment to Rotary. God bless you for what you do. After all is said and done, after all of the magnificent teaching of this man here, Ken Boyd, the hard work of our district governor, each of us here today, what are you going to do about it?